Hi, everybody, and welcome to Customer Service Week. We love this week, a fantastic opportunity to celebrate all of the great things that happen in our industry, and also the chance to pair up with some of our amazing industry leaders and partners to help us dig a little deeper into some of the things that we're seeing around the environment. We are lucky enough today to be joined by one of our industry's leadership experts, Shelley. Shelley does a lot of work with us here at Auscontact with a deep focus on leadership and empowering people to deliver and drive great results. So super excited about today's session. And to be perfectly honest, it could go anywhere. The session itself, leading with impact. So elevating performance and customer excellence, which is at the heart of everything that all leaders across organisations are trying to do. But equally, the conversations we're having are around some of those challenges that's actually, impeding that progress and getting in the way. So we'll really dig deep into that today. So in the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes. We're hoping the session provides some interesting insights into things that kind of getting back to some of the basics around that real focus on leadership, and give you some insights to take away and think more and talk more about within your organisation. I'm Fran, CEO of Auscontact and your moderator for today. Just some general housekeeping for you. Please remember to interact. As we're talking, we would love to, encourage you to put any comments, Q&A, chats, thoughts, etc., into either the Q&A feature or the chat feature, and we'll tap into those as you're going. If you want us to dig a bit deeper into some of the stuff we're talking about, let us know. Even if you've just got some comments or commentary to make sure you use those. If you've got any issues with your tech, use the raise hand button. You guys are all experts at this by now, and we'll jump in and help. Otherwise, you are free to revert to the phone numbers that would have been in your registration email with all the details. I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to introduce the amazing Shelley. If you have been around Auscontact or been involved with us before, you would all well and truly know Shelley. An absolute powerhouse when it comes to leading, guiding and supporting not just current leaders but emerging and future leaders. It says there on the screen, transformational leadership trainer and executive coach. Shelley, I'm going to let you tell the Cliff Note version of anything you want to share with everyone before we get cracking into the topic today.
I think there's a lot that I could share. It's how much do people want to actually hear about. I am super passionate about leadership, and when people ask for what purpose, it's really to make the workplace an environment where everybody thrives, and that when the workplace is an environment where everybody thrives, then our value proposition is it's obvious, and that then translates to allowing communities and people in our homes and lives in general to thrive. And it sounds really kind of big and visionary, but that really is why I continue to do every day. I'm like, if I can make the world just a little bit more joyful, create a little bit more love, a little bit more kindness, a whole lot more strength, then I think it's a better place for us all.
I love that. And I think you've touched on a bit of a misconception that I often see across different organizations, is that you can't be a great leader and lead with kindness. In fact, some of the very, very best leaders that I've ever had come from a place of come from that absolute joyful, generous, kind position. They're hard leaders, right? They are great, powerful, you're really strong leaders, but actually the two are not, you can't not have both.
Mm.
And I think sometimes when I see leaders just starting out, they have this perception of what they need to be as a leader. And sometimes they lose sight of themselves in that picture. And one of the things I love about the sessions that you run and the way you um, support that future leadership and really enhance and look to grow it is that it is about people finding themselves in leadership. Because
Mm.
actually, to be the best leader, you actually need to be authentic and you need to know yourself. So certainly one of the things I love about the work you do is about, it's not your job to help people be great leaders. You actually support them to become it themselves. And that, responsibility and accountability actually sits with them. And if they choose
Yeah.
to opt in, they opt in. And if they choose not to, um, how sad, but what a waste of time. But it's not on you, right? It's adults making conscious decisions. And I love that. Love
I can
it.
tell you, it was a hard lesson that I learnt when I did this program, which was business community mentoring program, where my my function was to work with someone who was long-term unemployed for 12 weeks for the purpose of gaining them long-term employment or sustainable employment. And so I went in with all of the strategies and the tools, and this is how you do it, and go be a version of me. And it just bit me in the backside so many times. I had two proteges who disappeared, like literally ran away, wouldn't come back to the sessions with me
Ghosted you
before I
well and
was
truly.
and because I didn't have positional power, I was like, hang on, where did they go? What's going on? Don't you know who I am? And they didn't care. And so it really, like, it was the most challenging yet rewarding experience where the moment I let go and I was like, forget about how I think you should approach interviews or, your approach to work. What's going to work for you? What do you want? And so this letting go, while it was hard, thinking about it, it was actually so much easier to guide them through that. And I think
Uh,
this is what we've got to do as leaders is like, just trust that if you let go, things will get better.
yeah. And actually, if everything that you do is so people dependent that you can't let go, that if that control cannot ease up at all, actually, what have you done except create a teacher student or parent child relationship with people that are only doing it because you're there and you're what's keeping people accountable? So you have to actually, as leaders, create environments where your people are empowered, they're trusted, but actually they have a willingness and a want to actually deliver within that environment. I think, yeah, I think it's insanely important to make sure that, again, it isn't about you. And you say that aha moment of being able to let it go. It's
Mm.
so important, but often it is that crazy, well, hang on a minute. Don't you know I've told you what to do? And what do you mean you've disappeared on me? I can imagine.
And then this other stuff comes up. It's like, well, if I let go of trying to control you, actually, all I've got left is to control myself. And now I have to look at myself and, I'm not really sure if I like what I see here. This is where that like depth of really knowing yourself. When we talk about emotional intelligence and building awareness, it's like, oh, this starts with me, and actually, I don't like this very much. And so you can be, it's easier to go back to, how do I control other people and what does that look like? But it's longer term, it's rewarding if you can go deep with yourself. It's hard, but you can go deep with yourself. And and actually, I think this is the key to how we move forward.
I think control's a really interesting term, right? Because it is actually all about you. It's not about anyone else. It is all about you. And again, if you think about your kids, it's one of those things, right? If you can actually start forgetting that actually because control is self-fulfilling as well. It's validating. It's self. When I say it's all about you, if you can't let it go, you'll really limit. Um, you'll limit your leadership impact, in
Mm.
my view, because again, people see it. People know that everyone on this line will know that leader that is that controlling leader. A couple of comments here, Shelley. And again, it's around that letting go stuff, right? Big life changing comment. Don't expect expect people to do things the way you do because you will constantly be disappointed and feel like you failed when it's not true, which is really true as well, right?
Mm.
You've got to let it go that it's not the way you would do something as well, let alone that, you know, controlling what they're doing, but actually it doesn't have to be the way you think it needs to be done. And then Alex has called out that balance comes with the accountability. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, definitely. And
definitely.
yeah, the more that you focus on the individual and them actually owning it, I kind of say that commitment precedes accountability. Like if you're not getting a
Yeah,
commitment, then really hard to hold accountable. And people will rarely commit to what it is that you're telling them to do, or what it is that you expect if they don't actually buy into that themselves. And so it's a huge waste of energy going down that path.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think as well sometimes the authority or the authorizing environment is what makes you feel you need to do it. My aha moment came. I was leading big teams, and a guy that I used to work for had said to me, I'm gonna hand you a couple of people that I want you to performance manage out the door. You know those gifts that you sometimes get." And I was like, "Oh my God," foregone conclusions for a start. And one of them had worked at this organization for a really long time, like incredibly knowledgeable, yeah, but old school. And I remember I would ask him to, deliver something or do something, and he was always late, always late. And it used to just bug me, of course, because I thought, well, doesn't he know who I am? Why didn't he give it to me when I asked? So I'd, lose it. I wouldn't lose it in the workplace, but I would be very terse and, you didn't give me exactly what I was after. So the next time, he still wouldn't do it when I'd asked him to. And I remember being in a car with my husband, and he said to me at the time, um, maybe it's about you. And I was like, excuse me, did you not just hear the story I told you? What do you mean it's about me? And he said, well, maybe it's you, not him. Anyway, I told him to stop talking. Um, but it bugged me, right? The whole weekend I was thinking about this, and I thought maybe it is about me. And by the time that following week came around, I thought maybe it is about me. So I had to change how I felt about this. I also had to change what I was doing, right? So I asked him to do something. He had 2 weeks to do it. Time came. He was late, but he was a couple of days late. And I didn't focus on that because that's all I'd been focused on, right? That he didn't give me exactly what I wanted when I wanted it. I took the time to actually read what he'd given me. It was excellent, incredible writer. He knew I didn't actually need it earlier than I did. Um, and my whole response to him was about the content and the focus and what he'd actually prepared. So I made a really big deal about saying, thank you for that. It was amazing. Exactly what I needed. Really appreciate it. Never said a word about the time because that's what I'd been overly obsessed with, right? My
Mm.
control. Anyway, the next time he gave me something that was a little bit shorter. And slowly but slowly, we actually met in the middle. And it was all about the fact that he knew I didn't really need it. I was just being stubborn. He was also being stubborn, but actually, I needed to change my behavior to get the best out of him. He went on to work for me for probably, many more years than anyone would have expected. And he was exceptional. He was exceptional at his job. He was great at what he did, and he knew his business so well. But I needed to stop being this time Nazi control freak, when actually that didn't really matter because what I wasn't looking at was the bigger picture about what he was contributing and the rest of it. But it was a really important lesson for me to recognize that actually what's my role in my response here? What's my role in how people are behaving? And how do I let the important things stay? And the things that really don't matter but are about me, how do I let them go? So
Mm.
one of those things, right?
It's interesting to look at, like if I work my butt off in order to get a leadership position, and then I'm in that leadership position and I'm getting absolutely smashed with the day to day and the extra responsibilities and the almost this expectation that I work really long hours and I sacrifice lots of things, which I've got opinions about. But if that's this is what you're moving into, and then the reward at some point was, well, I get the status, I get the title, I therefore don't have to, um, you know, I don't have to adjust my approach for you. You do that for
Mm,
me, but that's part of the reward of going through all of the crap I have to go through to be a leader. Hang on a second. Now you're saying I don't even get that. So perhaps we have to talk about, well, what is the benefit of being a leader? What are the perks? Where is the motivation? And I think this is where it doesn't come from an external source. I don't necessarily think it has for a while, but I think now it's like if you're moving into leadership for the title, for the status, for the I don't know, ability to control or the laziness not to try hard,
mm.
is you're in it for the wrong reason. It has to come from this intrinsic space.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the days where it was about status, they're gone. That's like old, think back old boys club and, tenure got your promotions and all that sort of thing. It's now about recognizing that the hard work doesn't stop as well. It's not about getting to a level and suddenly, you've done hard work and you sit back and other people now do it for you. That just doesn't exist. Um, but it is about, I think you raise the importance of really looking inwards and making a call as to number one, am I in it for the right reasons? Do I want it for the right reasons? And how do I continue to learn, grow as a leader? Because that kind of never stops. But equally, what do I need to change and now give back differently? Because every time we step into a new leadership role, for me, it's an opportunity to rethink what am I doing? What's my impact? Because each time you shift roles, you need to rethink what that now looks like, what can it look like, and what's your investment in bringing it to life.
Mm. Well, and this is where, you move into what visionary leadership looks like. Is visionary leadership, like the most visionary leaders are really connected to, what's the purpose for them individually. Um, you know, I will always say I want to make a difference in the world and I want that to be broader than that one-to-one interaction. And how else do you do that but from a leadership kind of space? And then when I'm imparting, my vision, or I'm focused on that, and that other people are then um, open to their own vision and then the difference that they can make in the world, then we start to actually see real change come about.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I think, I've talked to you before about conceptually knowing yourself and knowing your people, right? And there's a question here Trisha's put into the chat about, how do you coach or tap into number one, I guess, and identify leaders that are no longer in it for the right reason, because
Mhm.
often, there's those leaders, we all know them, that stop and actually stop others moving through. Number one, how do you coach them, and how do you create the environment where they're empowered to opt in and opt out? We've talked about that before, that personal choice, right? And Trish, my view would be sometimes you'll crack it, and you will actually be able to coach someone out of it, but you won't always. So you've got to be prepared to have those conversations that are, not always comfortable. But for me, I think there's such an importance in knowing your people and their motivators, and that actually helps you, kind of get underneath, what's their driver? Are they at a point where they should be reconsidering other options? And then it's not as clear cut, right? Once you know that, you then have to be prepared to have some honest conversations that are not always going to go down a path of, oh, yeah, you're right, I don't really want to be here, so I'll give you my 4 weeks' notice. We know it can take, 12 months and the rest of hard slog in coaching people. But, again, I would go back to Shelley, your point earlier. Um, your job is to give them the environment and the tools to thrive, but still it's on them, right? So what would you say, in relation to Trisha's question, how do you coach them out of that when people aren't in it for the right reason and you would see it?
Mm.
What would your advice be?
I think first of all, you have to approach the coaching conversations for the right reason, not just to solve a pain that it
Yeah.
is probably that you're experiencing. If you're going into a coaching conversation to try to fix something, you might get frustrated by the process, as opposed to, can I go into this conversation and hope that the person that I'm coaching comes out the other end as a better version of themselves, whatever that looks like, whether that's for the benefit of the organization or the benefit of something more broad. And then true coaching is allows you to do that, which is I'm asking them questions, I'm listening, I'm asking them questions, I'm listening. And this is where I would say, if you can approach the conversation with love, with kind, and I say love, but love as being the opposite to fear, is when you can bring love to a conversation, you can be kind and you can be strong, then it allows the other person to also feel into that love and connect and not operate from a fear space. Because often when we're coaching, it does come from a fear space on our part, and then we invoke fear on the other person and we cause it to shut down, or we cause them to resist whatever it is, or just disconnect because they feel like I feel like this is just a conversation to tick a box or to
Token.
do whatever
Yeah.
it is, to performance
Yeah.
management, whatever that is. And so when you approach a coaching conversation with kindness, with love, and with the I just want you to come out the other end as a better version, then the questions will naturally go that way. I'll be asking, where are you at in your career? What is it that you wanted for yourself, when you were younger? If you were, zoom back 20 years, where did you think you would be right now? Are you happy with that? Um, where would you like to go next? Is that a reality? A lot of people who say, "Oh, I'm happy where I am, just want to stay here and not really do anything else." It's like, there's work to be done, even if you're staying in the same role, because the environment is changing and it's changing quite quickly. It has been for the past sort of 5 years. We've really seen this acceleration since, AI has come onto the scene. And so it's no longer um, it's no longer an option to stay the
Mm.
same, even in the same role. So sometimes the coaching conversations have to start from the, hey, none of us are safe sitting comfortably. This is not a conversation I'm having with anyone because they're underperforming. This is a conversation I'm having with everyone because we all need to see the shift. Because you see the skills gap that has been expanding for the last number of years is not closing. So we're not
Correct.
making any progress. And you know, I heard about the skills gap probably 18 months ago. And it's looking a whole lot grimmer than what we originally anticipated. We're just not keeping up.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I think the examples you just used around some of those questioning techniques within that coaching session, none of that is personal. I mean, it's personal content, but it's not performance personal. It's certainly not individual personal. So it's we're going to do it to everybody. We're going to have those same conversations, and it's a really healthy set of conversations to have at least once a year. You should be having that stuff, right? You should be retouching and reconnecting to what comes out of that conversation, though, throughout the whole year.
Mm.
But you should at least be having that reset, reframe, rethink at a really clear and designated point with all of your direct reports, right? Giving you the opportunity to then check back in. Because the person that says, really, I thought I'd be doing, a job that looks like this or something that looks like this. And it's like, well, what's stopping you? What else? What are those limitations? How do we work on those? What else could we do?
Mm.
But then tying it back into the changing environment. And, you and I have talked a lot about, what are people predicting as far as leadership challenges and leadership opportunities over the next couple of years with innovation and tech changes and the rest of it. We're actually not seeing a whole lot, right? As far as we're seeing a lot of change, a lot of technology change and the rest of it. But, again, we're seeing organisations say, that's it, everyone's back in the workplace. We're seeing this real shift. My view is that's about leadership. That's because there are some gaps that they're saying, right, it's because not people aren't in the office. So therefore, let's get them all back in and let's sort this out and let's get culture happening and let's get leadership happening. But that isn't the answer.
Mm.
We've actually got to focus on what's the leadership question and what's the leadership challenge. And it might be that there's an organisational construct that says we want people in the office 3 days a week, and that's fine. But actually, if you're just bringing people back in but not making any other changes, you're still not going to change anything except where people are sitting. So the real opportunity goes back to, what are those basics? What are the things that we are seeing as the gaps? And COVID has really kind of left this hangover. During COVID, we saw a whole lot of people jump and shift into leadership roles. They weren't supported, they weren't trained, they weren't, coached to actually step into those leadership roles. We've seen a whole lot of job creep as a result of that. But equally, we've got a whole lot of people that don't really feel empowered as leaders suddenly leading. And we are still there. We are still there. And they don't know how to have hard conversations a lot of the time. They don't know how to coach others. They don't know how to really look at what is the underlying issue here, because it isn't where someone's sitting. That might contribute to some other things, but actually, unless leadership's changing, how do we address any of those problems? And the gap, you're right, the gap is not getting any smaller.
Well, and I think a big challenge is that we continue to look for easy solutions, and they're not necessarily easy in practice, but they're easy in implementation. So work faster,
Mm.
cut corners, reduce the quality output, don't have conversations with your people, work longer hours. We're not going to put that in writing, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge. No one does a 40-hour week. I'm like, why not? Like, I I feel like leadership has become complex, and
Agree.
I think we have to stop talking about it as though it's this simple thing that you can just kind of wing your way through until you figure it out. For those of us who have winged our way through, have felt serious pain only
Mm.
to start to figure it out 1 or 2 decades into our journey. But do we have time to do that with all these new leaders today? No, we don't. And so what is it that we can be doing? And these conversations are great because I think this is the start of it. But how do we start to pay a little bit more attention to what's possible and then do the challenging work? I think it's easy once you get your head around it, but I think starting it off, like having coaching conversations regularly with your people to build their capability, to get them to think about how they would solve problems. That's how you empower. It's over time. And when we talk about coaching someone through where are you at in your career, that's a conversation I'd be having every month. I'd be starting with the big one once a year, and then I'd be just, I don't know, like I'd just be picking away
Where are
at
you
it.
going with that? What's the goal this time? Yeah, what have you done? Yeah,
Yeah.
agree.
And so help them to build layer upon layer. I think we've got to take this, layered approach. It's like, can I meet my people where they're at and
Yeah.
then build layer upon layer upon layer upon layer? That takes time, it takes effort, it takes intentionality and focus. It doesn't take a huge amount of time once you build the rhythm around it, but getting started can be seen as quite overwhelming. And I think a lot of people prevent, oh, I'll do that when I get time, and you're never going to have the time.
Well, because you make time for the stuff you're comfy with, right? So
Yeah.
when I talk about job creep, that's the biggest issue. So the stuff that I'm comfortable with in this job, I'm lifting it, I'm shifting into the unknown. So what part of that can I take with me, because I can do that, and then I get busy in that.
Mm.
It's the comfy lounge chair in the corner, and it might be the reports or the stats or the whatevers. But probably what I don't see a lot, because to me, you've nailed it. Those conversations are actually what create culture. Those conversations allow the pay it forward. Those conversations are the ones that help those people then coach others. So there's this investment that is so worth it, both from a personal development perspective, for your people, but actually for organizational outcomes. If you're
Mm.
not taking the time to be deliberate and intentional in your leadership craft, you need to make some time and space. And that actually might mean that you need to block out time in your calendar every single day that is, I don't know, 20 minutes or something, that is all about what am I doing? What are my intentions? What does that look like? How does it manifest? And
Mm.
actually take the time. You commented on, the 40-hour weeks and the rest of it. And I was having a conversation only last week with someone. And we'd sort of had some coaching sessions earlier in the year, and they were adamant that they were going to stop the crazy. They were going to sit back and not sit back and take the foot off the pedal work wise. They were going to be far more deliberate and strategic with what they said yes and no to. They were carving out time every day to think about their leadership practice and how they needed to continue to transform and invest. And they were not going to work 7 to 7 every day and a day on the weekend, which they were doing, right? Which is absolutely unsustainable. Had been chatting to them, things were going really well. They were really building the right rhythm, focused on the development of their people. And when I caught up last week, I was just like, oh, you're not going to believe it. The crazies hit the fan in our environment, and I've reverted totally back to it, starting at 7, finishing at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. She goes, but it's okay because everyone's the same. I'm like, no,
Mm.
it's not okay. It's like this badge of honor that this craziness, we all
Mm.
have to do it. We're all pulling our bit. And I said, all you're doing is masking the fact that there's no time to be doing all of the things that you're doing. So if it's from a delivery perspective for your manager, you're actually hiding the fact that there's too much on, which doesn't help anybody. It means you're not role modeling all of those things that you
Mm.
identified as being really important to you. And all you're showing your people is that to do your job, you can't finish before 7 o'clock at night. For anyone wanting
Yeah.
to step into these leadership roles, they're thinking, I can't commit to that.
Mm.
So it's setting up this environment where I said, how's that going to work with, the right to disconnect and things like that in the environment? And, we are seeing some interesting noises in the environment around class actions and things like that from big organisations that are going to come back to bite leaders over the next couple of years.
Oh, absolutely. And when it pushes us into when we've got a huge sort of weight on our nervous system and we end up not bringing our best selves to work, then you've got all these issues around bullying and safe workplaces where, leaders are, even when you're just observing it, you're personally liable. And so I think we need to start talking about that as well. I think to your point around everybody else is doing it, is there is this concept of synchronicity where humans
Mm.
look to synchronize with the people around them. And so I think when we're making decisions around how long am I going to work and what am I going to do, is we have to factor in this need for synchronicity, and we've got to accept that there will be additional resistance to what we want to do. But I think this is how revolutions kind of happen. You read Malcolm Gladwell's book Tipping Point, so
Yeah.
it's this push, push, push against inertia, against inertia. You flip over the other side, suddenly you've got momentum and it doesn't take as much energy. And I think where we're at in terms of leadership and what can be done, what's realistic, and how do we reduce the number of hours that we're working and start to be more deliberate, is we're building up, but we need more people to get on that. And so it's so much easier for a group of leaders who work in an organization, so a leadership team, to go, what are we actually committing to and can we hold it? And even if they can just hold it in their space,
Mm.
the synchronicity within that team should be enough to keep it going, as long as they acknowledge that the people around them might not necessarily be on the same page. So there will be that resistance. But yeah, I think like once we're over that initial hump of, and also can we do it? Like I retired busy late last year. I'd sort of fallen into a little, I had this like feast and famine, and I'd burn out and then I'd relax and I'd have no money, and then running my own business, I was like, how do I run my own business, be a good mum to my kids, have a good relationship with my partner, have really good mental health and physical health and well-being. And I have worked really, really, I don't want to say hard, but I've been very focused this year about achieving this, what I would call sustainability, and
Mm,
it's looking good. I don't work,
I love that.
I don't think I work, I don't count my hours, but I don't think I work for more than 40 hours a week. And it has meant giving up on doing things that, it kept the dopamine levels high, but actually didn't transition and change things longer term. And so even for me as an individual has been an interesting process going
Mm.
through that, but I think I've got it.
That's awesome. That harmony is really nice, right? And I think we talk about sustainable practices. I see so many execs stuck in, you know, functional freeze or functional paralysis. And whilst they are consumed and busy, they're actually not productive.
Mm,
So it's really interesting, that reset. And, it goes back to this need for leave in the year, this need for reset and downtime and balancing those other things. And your work life balance will change all the time. And what's great for you it won't be great for me, and vice versa. But it is about finding harmony in what it is that you need to fill your cup, and make sure all of those different components are actually working or firing, as opposed to that sort of, I'm constantly busy, but I'm really not getting anything done. And we all have those days, right? But shifting
yeah.
away from that being your week or your month is crucial. Shelley, if you think about teams, right? One of the biggest challenges is keeping their motivation going. What would you, what would you suggest or comment to people that you're seeing, around, yeah, again, we're all striving for high performance. We all want high performance outcomes anyway. We want performance results. How do you keep people motivated? How do you connect into that intrinsic self of, we talked about purpose, so
Mm,
connecting to real purpose. But what would you suggest? What are the things that you're seeing work well when it
mm.
comes to motivation?
Yeah, so a couple of things that elicit those light bulb moments with the leaders that I'm working with at the moment are, the first one is about listening. So we are shocking listeners. Even right now with this webinar, I wonder how many people who are part listening to this and part trying to get through their emails or responding to Teams. And so I think acknowledging the mental load that it takes to split your focus between multiple things, but also the repetition that's required. So, sorry, can we have that conversation again? Because I wasn't listening the first time. And by the way, I probably won't be listening properly this time either. So we'll have to have 3 more conversations. Is it annoys? It's very annoying to know that, oh, this conversation actually doesn't mean that much because we're going to have it again anyway. And so it's this half-hearted, half-committed, um, you know, concept or approach to interactions that is wasting time and is
Mm,
destroying motivation, and people are feeling unheard because they know that you're not with them, that they know that you're not fully present. So listening is a really simple one, is make a decision to listen and be there, or just don't. And, you know, I've said this in the past. It's something I continue to bang on about. But the other thing is expectations. So I think we're really quick to um, make assumptions about what people should and shouldn't know, or should and shouldn't do, and how they approach their role and those kind of things. But it's we're not having enough conversations around our assumptions, and we're not talking about changing expectations. So when I say to people, what does success look like for you in your role? They go, oh, well, I don't know. Well, how do you know whether you're achieving or not? Oh, it's in my PD. Now, if you're relying on the PD to manage expectations around, then you're not moving fast enough. PDs generally only change when you move in or out of a role. And so you think about expectations and how fast they're shifting. I'd be having an expectations conversation around, hang on, what's the purpose of my role? What does success look like? Are these metrics still valid? Are these priorities still 1, 2, and 3, or have they moved to 4, 5, and 6? And I need to put some others up there. I'd be having that quarterly at the minimum. but each
Yeah.
month, coming back and checking on it. So if you want me to be motivated, stop moving the goalposts and not telling me, because I'm okay that the goalposts need to move, but as long as they're not moving every week and
Mm.
you've got some stability, and stability, it might only be a month depending on your environment, but let's focus on this. Let's manage expectations more regularly and with this two-way dialogue, where we're gaining commitment from the other person. It's not just, well, I'm your leader, this is what I expect for you and from you, and this is what you shall deliver. It's, hey, these are my expectations of your role. What are your thoughts around that? And is this something that you're willing to commit to? And if they're not, okay, tell me more about that. And we have a conversation about that. It's the expectation conversation that results in a commitment of some form that will
Mm.
help keep people motivated. That's what I've sort of seen.
No, I think that's great, and I think you're right. I think so often people are very focused on what they're about to say, as opposed to listening to what someone else is saying, and it stops them actually responding with purpose as well. So they're just listening to give their own opinion back. So no, I think that's a really good piece of advice. I think the other thing, and I know you talk a lot about feedback, but I think with building an environment where those expectations and accountability are really called out and have those conversations one on one, but actually you should be able to have those conversations in your team meetings each week. You should be able to say, how are we going with X? Everybody should be privy to the conversation. It's not private, it's not personal, unless it's quite specific and direct about
Mm,
non achievement of something. But actually, we need to start normalizing feedback and actually making it that it is consumable at all levels, right? So sitting in a team meeting, we've got accountabilities that we're all open and talking about. We can talk all about our successes and our challenges. You utilize a group to actually create active steps out of feedback as well. Suddenly there's team accountability. Suddenly there's mutual respect, but also mutual understanding that you're actually building within your team, and this collegiate kind of response to recognizing that for some people they need a bit more support, for others that actually, hey, I'm going to give you some suggestions on things, but actually normalizing those conversations is
mm,
one of the real things that's going to help us deal with some of these longer term challenges where people aren't having the uncomfortable conversations, right? And suddenly they're hit with the whole, I've been bullied because someone asked me to do my job. And if you look at results in Fair Work, let me tell you, I think the latest stats, it's nearly 80%, might be 78%, so don't quote me on the number, but of cases that have been before Fair Work, they've all been reviewed, right? They get looked at very often, but it was something like in the high 70s of all cases that were brought around bullying were actually not bullying at all. And don't get me wrong, there's lots of bullying that happens in the workplace. I'm not suggesting it doesn't, but these were found to actually be work conversations about expectations. But
mm.
because they weren't normalized, the person receiving feedback said, that's not fair, you're bullying me, maybe it wasn't delivered well, all of those things. But again, we've got to normalize performance as a conversation, and that includes progress, outcomes, feedback, suggestions for change. Like, all of those things should be just how we talk about the work that we do, right? It's not personal, it's about the work.
No. Well, absolutely. And I think this is where there is power in coaching, because a lot of us
Yeah.
don't want to um, tell our people what we think they should be doing. A lot of us just want them to get better. And so we imply and drop hints, etc. And inevitably people don't pick it up because they're not that aware, or we're not focused on what it is that you want us to focus on. And so um, we, if we can get better at just opening up the dialogue, but offering it in a way that is, it's coaching to start with. It's, hey, what is it that you focus on? I was actually talking to someone about this morning, around, if you want to understand the effectiveness of a coaching conversation, ask them at the end, what's the one thing that you're taking away from this conversation? It'll give you a really good idea around where their focus is, what their level is, what the next layer that you need to build upon that is. And I think it's this again, it's an ongoing conversation. But when we talk about feedback, there was a Randstad report that came out earlier this year, and it talked about the 5 Bs of resourcing. So the 5 Bs are buy skills, build skills, borrow skills, bounce skills, which is unlearn, and bot as a skill. And I think about, if that's how we're going to optimize performance, meet productivity metrics, continue to move forward, we can do this rote or theory learning all we want, but feedback actually, I think, is the tool that complements whatever theoretical learning that we're doing at any point in time. Otherwise, how do we check in on whether the theory is translating to application and it's actually being applied in a way that makes sense and makes a difference? So if we can't start to have this real-time real-time check-ins, and there's so many industries that are looking at, how do we get real-time input? There's call recording software that can measure customer sentiment, and that's all real time. And so how do we take this real-time approach and go, well, how do we continue to build skills real time? And the cheapest, most convenient, most accessible way is to do that through feedback. But we have to separate feedback for growth and development from accountability and performance management metrics. And we have to be able to do both. And they're both very different skill sets. So I think it's that separation of feedback conversations are not accountability conversations, or vice versa. Don't treat them that way. And then you'll start to be able to build feedback conversations with safety and with more of an openness to people learning and taking things on board.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I love your comment about, at the end of a coaching session, say, what did you take away? Because probably the other thing it does is help you understand what you thought you were saying, was it heard? Some of that will be on the person you're coaching, but actually, again, I go back to my story. If you need to change how you deliver because they're not taking it on board, you actually need to change what you're saying,
Mm.
and how you're saying it, and you know, test it differently. But I think that's a really good way to sort of check in with that. And again, the importance of those expectations and clear accountability. And as leaders, we've got every strategic document around the joint. You need to connect your people to that with purpose. So translate it for them, make it matter, make it real, and weave it through everything you do. You should have, a really clear view of what's your change agenda and what's your change framework and change strategy. Because again, the one thing we can do for our people is actually create adaptive adaptive leadership is what you need to be applying. You need to be flexible. You need to, really all of those. I call them 101, Shelley. Like it's the back to basics of leadership. But it's kind of like some of that's been missing because organizations have been thinking, oh God, we've got to invest in AI and we've got to invest in this and we've got to invest in that. And I think it might have been Trish earlier in the convo said, if you've got some spare money, invest it in your leaders. That's actually the 101 that's going to give you the outcomes. Regardless of the mechanics of technology or platforms and the rest of it, you still need the motivated people to actually deliver. And, again, what this week, the theme of the week is above and beyond. Well, how do you even know what that looks like if you don't actually have a really clear view of expectations? What is above and beyond? How do you, and is that sustainable? I don't know.
Well, I think that if we're going to go above and beyond, we need to stop looking backwards and expecting things to kind of return, or waiting for, like, if you're still waiting for things to settle after COVID, then
Never going to happen.
It's not going
Never
to
going to
happen.
happen.
And so it is really exciting. I think I think the other thing to consider for leaders is overwhelm. And it is so
Yes.
incredibly easy to be overwhelmed. You just
Yeah.
have to, you know, I start researching future of leadership. What are the stats? What does it look like? And there's report after report, and they're 60 pages and they're 90 pages. I'm like, oh my gosh, my brain is spinning. There's so much. Then, this fear kind of sets in. Oh my goodness, am I seeing the right thing? I think it's this like moderation. I think about what Dad used to say when I was a little kid. He's like, everything's okay in moderation, Shell. So just don't guts yourself is what he would say. Just kind of enjoy little pieces and come back to it. And I think that serves well from a leadership perspective. Is there's so much that we can be overwhelmed about, particularly when
Yes.
we're looking into the future. But the future is where we're headed. So let's look into the future. And when we notice ourselves start to get overwhelmed, just step back for a little bit. But don't avoid going back there again and again, because this is where you will find opportunities to grow and move forward. And you can do it with your people as well.
Yeah. And I would say, regardless of what the future holds, actually, what is still required is strong leaders.
Yeah.
Strong leaders with really strong leadership skills, right? So
Yeah.
if again I go back to, if you can build the right environment, empower your people, understand and recognize and then work to what motivates them,
Mm,
celebrate and call out, all the successes and the accountability piece around expectations. Actually, yeah, it's guts, regardless of what the future holds. Because I
mm,
think sometimes we get caught
mm,
up in everything is
mm,
changing in the future, right? So what? What actually you need to do is lead people through, with and through
mm,
change. And that requires deep, 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 deep intrinsic leadership skills
mm.
that actually aren't changing. You
Well,
need to be aware of the environment changes, but actually your leadership skills, go back 50 years. They still said the same things were important.
Well, Mark Twain came up with the concept of eat that frog,
Yeah,
and then Brian Tracy wrote a book about it called Eat That Frog, and I'm still talking about it today, saying this is one of the most simplistic ways
yeah,
to approach prioritization and making a point of that. Yeah, you're right. There's so much is changing, but fundamentally nothing really does, and so
I
I think
always
that's a
say the more we change, the more we stay the same. It's
yeah.
seriously true. But I think we forget it. I think we forget to focus on the leadership skills that matter. And I think for some people, unfortunately, the focus hasn't been there to support and give them those basics.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that, we continue to come back to it. I think the other thing that I would say for leaders to get past is their dislike of repeating themselves.
Yeah.
So, why do I have to always say this? Well, if it's important, you will
Because
always have to say it. And so if you've got an issue with sounding like a broken record, then maybe leadership is not for you. And I think there's an alignment with leadership and parenting in this respect is like you just have to get okay, like get comfortable with repeating yourself again and again and again and again, and it doesn't end. And you do, what you're saying, you were probably saying 20 years ago. I know there's things that I say I was saying 20 years ago as well. It's like, but I'm not giving up on that because they are the right
absolutely.
mantras.
And they still matter, right? I think the other thing probably that is more important than ever in a leadership cohort is that voice of curiosity, creating the environment where people feel safe and connected to fail and fail fast. Because we actually want curious people. We want people that challenge the norm. We want people that continue to question why we do things, because that is how we sort of get past some of the crazy stuff we do. And I was talking to some leaders in an organization a few weeks ago, and I said to them, who are your best people? And they told me their three best people, but if you looked at the stats, they weren't their best people. So actually who they told me were their easiest people. They were their
Awesome.
favourites. They didn't, and by favourites, that's a whole nother story. But they were the easy ones. They were the ones that were created harmony. They didn't challenge. They didn't disrupt. They came in and did their work. And left and went home with a smile on their face, and really important people within the team. But they weren't their high performers. They
Mm,
thought they were because they weren't the ones that continuously challenged them. In fact,
mm,
they're high performers when we told them who they're on numbers, right? So this was just about performance stats, not about necessarily who is the harmonious person who has the behaviours or attitudes that they recognise or thought what what considered high performance. When we told them, they're like, but they're always bugging us and they're always asking questions and are always saying we should change things. It's like, yeah, they're the ones that are actually going to make your world better and different. So don't get caught up in the assumption of what is what is the lead indicators that you're looking for as far as success. And it goes back to the point you made before about what does success look like and how do we know whether we've reached it or not. So I would challenge everybody to think about what's the easy part of our job, and how do I create an environment where people love nothing more but telling me what could be different, or telling me things that aren't working well, because actually that's what you want to foster and harness and
mm.
encourage within the environment as well.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest development opportunities people have. So whenever ever someone wants to transform, they want to develop themselves, I'm like, okay, this is your biggest development opportunity, and that is to look at the person who frustrates you the most, maybe the
Yeah.
person you don't like, maybe the person that you would love to get rid of. Look at them and find out what is it that you can learn about them, and how much of who they are or what they're doing is a reflection on something that needs growing and developing in you as a person. And it's a really annoying thing. It's how I develop, or how I identify my development opportunities today, particularly in that EQ space, is I'll go, who's annoying me and what is it about that? And I've just learned so much. I've learned the importance of patience. I've learned the importance of being able to go into detail when it's needed. I've learned the importance of slowing down and really kind of focusing on something that might seem to be benign or irrelevant, just to understand that. And the more I learn about myself and the more that I can sort of overcome my own issues, the less the other people annoy me. And it's amazing what you can do with the energy that you used to spend on being annoyed at that person.
It's so true though, right? And you learn so much about yourself. My
Mm,
my favorite saying, Shelley, is let it go through you.
yes.
Stop it worrying you, let it go through you. Um, because again, if you can build yourself to the point where you're getting the outcomes that you need, you're having the right conversations with your people, they know exactly what they need to deliver, some
Mm,
of that noise actually doesn't matter. Don't react to it. And in fact, you don't need to respond. You just need to let
mm,
it happen and let it go through you and
mm,
lead regardless.
mm,
Because again, diversity would tell us that a team full of people that don't have any of those quirks or foibles, that don't go through us, would be a very boring and vanilla group of people, and none of you will be going through phases of growth.
mm.
If you are all just the same person, um, yeah, it might be pleasant and harmonious, but man, it'd be pretty boring. And I'm not so sure that it would be above and beyond or driving the most spectacular performance outcomes. You actually need some of that rub and grind
Mm.
to really kind of go, oh, okay, what do I need to be thinking about here? So it helps you stay alive as a leader too. But yeah, Shelley, I'm mindful of time. I know that you and I could talk about this stuff, and we'll do another, we'll chat more. But thank you for today. I've loved hearing your thoughts. I think we can tell from the chat that lots of people have enjoyed hearing more about sort of role of leaders and how to tap into some of those challenges. Everybody, thanks for coming. We've got some fantastic sessions all week, and
Thank you.
we will again have a session with Shelley, because like I said, I could probably do this every single day and learn a million things every single day. So
Thanks,
thanks,
Fran.
Shelley. We'll talk
Thanks, everyone.
soon. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk again.
Thanks.